Well, the states are running the school systems and they've been listening to advice, and you certainly get the sense that throughout this process it's been the states and some of the other experts who've been pushing the Prime Minister and the federal government to act according to the health advice. And if there are state governments and other experts that are saying, no, look, it's too early to start lifting the restrictions and we need to keep schools closed for or restricted for safety reasons, then that's what we should be listening to. I'm concerned that there's been a bit of...
But you're just to jump in there, you're indicating that there are health experts telling the government, well, hang on, this is a risk. The government's also getting its own health advice. Now, there's not clearly one bit of advice here. There are different options, how much you open up schools and how you do it. But the government's also acting on medical advice.
Well, in that context, I'm worried that some of that we're seeing a bit of Trumpism creep into the government over recent days. We're seeing it with Scott Morrison coattailing Donald Trump with criticism of the World Health Organization, which to me is just mind-boggling that we'd be following in Donald Trump in the US's footsteps when it comes to the response to this crisis. There was earlier on, you saw within the National Cabinet and sort of within the broader community, this we were being told, for example, that it's okay to go to the football and then 24 hours later it wasn't. It's okay to shake hands, 24 hours later it wasn't. You certainly get the sense that some in the federal government are chafing at the bit to lift restrictions and to return to the way things were before.
Adam Bandt, do you not have any criticism for the fact that they were applauding China's early handling of this and what we know since?
Well, Donald Trump is out there saying they should have gone stronger. What's he saying? The World Health Organization should have more powers to intervene, international governments, and tell them what to do. Is that something that he would have allowed with respect to his own response?
Given its track record, Donald Trump's not alone in his criticism of the World Health Organization.
Well, I don't think that's any reason to pull the funding at this time. We need strong global cooperation to make sure we tackle this crisis. They've declared it to be a pandemic. In many ways, they're the best sources of some of the information that's coming out at the moment. To start using this opportunity now to pull away from a global and multilateral response is, to me, very, very worrying.
And that's why the government isn't going down that path. They're just talking about reform within the WHO, which a lot of people would agree with.
Well, it's in due course. If we need to talk about reform, then we can talk about reform. But at the moment, to jump on the coattails of Donald Trump and to say, and you can see what
Trump is trying to do. Donald Trump is trying to deflect blame from his own appalling handling of the crisis and start pointing at WHO and at China. And I don't think at the moment it's helpful for us to be joining in and cheering on Donald Trump from the sidelines. We should be calling for a stronger global response.
I'm not sure it's a cheering on when we have a more cautious criticism. Anyway, we've ventilated that point. You've been quite vocal about renters saying get the legislation in. The government, of course, with a moratorium on evicting people during this time, at least over the next 6 months as a minimum. So you agree with the approach? You just want it in concrete in legislation?
Well, it's taken a very long time and we've still got a patchwork response across the country and it's still not good enough. We've got this notional 6 months eviction ban, which isn't applying uniformly, and in many states there are hoops that you have to jump through in order to be able to get it. One of the things that really worries me is that there's still no plan for people who are in rental strife, to get proper relief from their rental payments. And the government seems to have acted quicker with respect to commercial tenants, which of course is important. But we're hearing reports from my office and across our team, we're hearing reports quite regularly of the ambiguity that exists at the moment being taken advantage of, people being threatened with eviction. And then, of course, there's the question of what happens at the end of the 6 months. And are people just going to be required to presume that they can afford to pay 6 months rent or whatever the shortfall is in that period of time? And there's a real lack of clarity.
There perhaps does need to be some there. Look, at the moment they're saying work together, governments... the government's saying banks, landlords and renters. Do you have any sympathy for landlords as well? I mean, there are the example of retirees. Their only income is coming from an investment property. If they're getting zero, what are they supposed to do?
we do have sympathy, and it's why from a very early stage we've been calling for mortgage holidays, including for landlords who are going to be affected, but on the proviso that it's they're getting relief because they're also giving their tenants relief. So yeah, of course we do.
But that doesn't help if you own a property and you're relying on the income in retirement. That you might not have a mortgage.
Well, of course, if for example, if you're one of those people who owns one property and that is the only source of your income, then of course there needs to be some means of supporting you. But I think but there are also other. But in that instance, for example, we're also getting reports of landlords who, because it's their only income, are really putting the hard word on tenants. They might be young people, casuals who are excluded from the JobKeeper package. They're the ones who are most likely to be renters. And we've been getting reports of people saying, look, I'm sorry, you might be in strife, but so am I. If you don't, you've got to pay up. Right. Otherwise, I'm going to evict you and find someone who can pay the full freight. And it's taken so long to get to even halfway. And there is an eviction crisis, and it could get worse. And the federal government has bumped it off to the states, which just isn't good enough. And the states are coming up with piecemeal responses that in some places are better than others, but tenants are still being left in the lurch.